All right. So thank you, Erin, for sharing your knowledge and experience with us today.
Thank you, Jen, and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here today. We're here because we're interested in requests for proposals, procurement, but today's session is a little bit different from the ones you might have attended that suggest this is how you find RFPs, this is how you bid successfully on RFPs. Today, we're looking at this as not just a way to win contracts, but as a way to build your brand's reputation and visibility over time. I run EMC3 Consulting, and my work sits at the intersection of governance and culture. My name is Erin McDonald. I live on Treaty 6 land, settler name known as Edmonton, or the traditional Cree Amiskwachi Waskaikan, or Beaver Hills House. I've spent a lot of time thinking about procurement processes from both the inside and the outside, which is where my perspective comes from. You can imagine being in the world of collecting art inside a government where procurement systems are set up to buy reams of paper for office supplies or trucks for maintenance. But fine art is a little bit different. And that's where I started to learn my practice of understanding how procurement can assist in building bigger things. I'm going to have slides for every section, but you'll notice I'm trying not to read off my slides. I'd be happy to share the slide deck after the session with anyone who'd like to have it. Today, we're not talking about how to win every RFP because, frankly, anyone who tells you that they can teach you how to win every RFP is probably selling you some snake oil. This session today is about how to use the process strategically. So even if you don't win, your effort is not wasted. Today, I'll share how RFP responses can build your reputation as a brand, how to participate in the system as a small or medium enterprise sustainably, and how to make better decisions on what to bid on over time. You might be asking, Erin, sure, we've bid on things and we've not won them. What about you? I recently, very recently, spent roughly 60 to 80 hours developing a response to a bid that was posted on a national bids and tenders forum. It was a project that was dear to my heart professionally and personally. It would have represented 1 to 2 years of significant work for my firm, and I assembled a bespoke team of experts across the country to support this project. I felt that this was one of my best responses I'd ever written. The bid closed, and I noticed there were only 2 vendors who'd submitted. Imagine my excitement when I thought my chances were 50-50. And then I got the notice. Not that I'd lost, but that the procurement was just canceled. Canceled? No winner, no explanation, just deleted. So the question for me became, well, was that a waste? What was the point? I had to remind myself that procurement, even though we often think of it as purely transactional, is not just a transaction. It is a system. Buyers are constantly assessing for risk, credibility, and fit. Every time you submit, you become part of that system of knowledge and awareness, even if you don't win the bid. How can we take advantage of this? I'd like you to consider responding to RFPs as brand touchpoints. Oftentimes, we go into a bid process thinking price is the most important factor. I will argue in some cases, if price is worth 75% of the total score, it is most certainly a major factor. But in my experience, most procurement tenders are not 75% based on price, unless it's a very specific product that already exists on the marketplace. Buyers typically are not just reading your answers. They're reading how you think and how you position yourself as a business. What big, hairy, audacious problem are you able to solve for them? Maybe not today, but in the future. So think about how you're presenting yourself. Are you clear? Do you understand the problem the client has fully? And can you articulate how your organization, skill set, or specific experience is the right fit? Make sure you're not overreaching. It's exciting to see a big proposal, but knowing your limitations as a firm is also a critical part of brand alignment. Last, they're looking at how you present yourself professionally. Is this a firm that we want our brand to be associated with? That's where your brand comes in. These are some things I see commonly on the side of the tender issuer. Most small and medium enterprises do not lose because they're not capable. They lose on four things. They're mis-signaling to the buyer. Perhaps you're overpromising. Remember, if you're not one of the big firms, you have the ability to promise your specialty. But do not overpromise when you know you can't deliver, because the risk of that is you win, but you're not able to service the contract. That's worse for your brand in the long term than not bidding in the first place. Make sure you're not overpromising. Overscoping. I do this a lot. I get really excited about a project. I think, yes, but if they were thinking about this in the bigger picture, we could do another evaluation. We could do a coaching session. I could bring in these experts. But that's not what they asked for. I often have to rein my excitement in, ask clarifying questions to the vendor. There's usually an open question period. And if there isn't, it's typically okay to follow up with the buyer with your questions about the tender, as long as you're willing for those answers to go to all of your competition. So make sure you understand the scope before you frame your project. Another thing I see are really generic responses. I read a lot of submissions from, we'll call them the big five, those big firms that you know work in major consulting work. They have a template. Their template works most of the time, and they don't have to put a lot of front-end effort in to bidding on jobs. They aim for volume over alignment. As small and medium enterprises, we might not have the capacity to bid on everything. So we have to be precise. I really discourage copy and paste responses. When I'm reviewing an RFP, I actually do a process that I call pulling it apart. I look at each section individually and align those with my firm's capacities, skills, and experience. If while I'm doing that, I realize that I'll have to overpromise or I'm maybe overscoping, I'll refine that. But what I try not to do is take an old RFP response and just repurpose it for this. Maybe the headings are the same. I have a structure and a format that I like. But at the end of the day, my responses tend to be fairly bespoke. I believe that's one of the advantages of being a small and medium enterprise is the ability to build a team and a response that support the specific needs of the client and not just a generalized approach to your goal. And the last thing I've seen missed is tone. There are some organizations that are incredibly uptight. If you envisioned them in your mind's eye, you might see them wearing a tuxedo or a very fitted suit. There might be other firms, especially in my line of work, where it's arts, culture, and heritage, where there might be a little more grassroots attitude. Perhaps feedback from community is central. When you're responding to a tender, think about what tone the original bid documents are in. If it is a very formal, meet these 16 criteria, they're probably expecting your response to align. But if they're a little more casual and are open to creative responses, maybe don't over professionalize your final submission and speak to the tone that that organization has set. So, key takeaway from this section: every bid builds your reputation, win or lose. It will either build your reputation with the organization that you've submitted to, or it will help you refine your reputation for yourself. Being clear on who you are, the service you provide, and how you achieve results is invaluable as you embark on any future procurement project. As small and medium enterprises, we can't bid on everything. And I know I'm at a place where I'm experiencing that scaling climb to my next level. There's work. I'd like to do more. So how do I decide what I bid on? What I've experienced, and I've seen my peers and partners experience, is the biggest risk isn't losing, it's overinvesting in the wrong opportunities and burning out capacity. When we overinvest, like I did in that procurement that was canceled, we've spent a large amount of time, in my case, between 60 and 80 hours, energy, my own, but also that of my partners and those who contributed, and the opportunity cost of choosing to focus my effort on this one opportunity instead of looking at perhaps a handful of smaller, but more likely to result in a positive outcome opportunities. So, knowing that we have to protect our time, energy, and factor in opportunity cost, I'd like to propose that right sizing is your next step. Not every bid deserves your full effort. I promise. You do not need to go in all in every time. Your question when something lands on your desk, like an RFP just landed in mine this morning, was not, can we do this? It should be, should we invest in this? If you step back and take the perspective of an investor in a project, it might change how you respond. A few questions to ask yourself at this point when that bid has come across your desk is fit. Is it truly aligned with your business? For me, my work is primarily in arts, culture, and heritage. Sometimes projects come across my desk that are tourism or recreation. I have to carefully explore those to make sure that if I will respond, that I really am aligned with the needs and outcomes of the project. Resources. Do we truly have the capacity to develop this bid and service it if we win? I have an amazing resource on my team. She pulls her weight every time and knocks it out of the park. She's also expecting very soon. When I'm preparing packages right now, I'm thinking, I'm not going to rely on that resource because that's not realistic. Especially if we win, I don't have that person for a period of time, so I shouldn't be promising them. And purpose. I'd like to think that every issuer of a tender knows what they want, but I'm not the only one, I think, on this call who's read a tender and goes, they have no idea what they want. This is a shot in the dark. If you read a tender that you think they don't know what they want, how can you know what they want? Perhaps your business is solving their needs problem and giving them a solution. And if so, you're perfectly positioned. For me, if I'm not sure they're sure what they want and they've sort of mentioned heritage language, but it's really imprecise, I might ask a lot of questions and maybe put a light effort into a bid. Now, what do I mean by light effort? I'd like to give you a really simple decision framework. This isn't a framework that's meant to overcomplexify your work or make you add scores and rankings as you're assessing opportunities. It's really just red light, yellow light, green light. And I think we're familiar with that. If you review the tender and you say, it is a strong fit with our capacity, the resources we have, and they clearly know what their problem is, and we are well situated to solve it, go ahead. Give it a strong effort and pursue that with the resources that you have. If the fit is unclear and you think, well, I probably could service that, but there's a few parameters that are a bit uncertain, maybe you do a light effort bid. I've done that where I haven't put in the full package and had design added and brought in additional resources to support my bid. I've just put together what I can offer from my desk and I've won some. They work out to be good projects because I've put in the right amount of effort that I'm comfortable with, even if I don't win them. I have to apologize. I have a cat who is realized that I'm doing something on screen and now has decided to cause no end of mischief. The last type of proposal that you might see is one that you just say it's a poor fit. For me, maybe it's a recreation sponsorship naming. Okay, I could do it, but I'm not likely going to sponsor a recreation facility. And there's firms that are more likely to do that in the ecosystem that I work in. I'll simply decline to bid. Give yourself permission to scale your effort. Not every opportunity deserves your best people or your weekend. So we've thought about how we build our brand using RFPs. We've thought about a simple decision framework on how to select RFPs that are well aligned. How do you differentiate yourself from the other players? First, I'd like to stress that differentiation is not. There's going to be one more. I'm so sorry. Thank you. Differentiation is not bigger, throwing every resource you have at a project. Bigger teams might look better on paper if you need that many people to bring the skill set required to serve the project, but bigger doesn't always mean better. A longer proposal, such as more words and a bigger binder, also doesn't necessarily mean better. Ideally, your response should hone in with concision on the question that's been asked. How can you uniquely solve our problem? And it's not about giving more promises than you can uphold. Differentiation is not doing more, it's about being clearer and more aligned. What I've seen that works are suppliers who understand their limits are the ones that buyers trust. I know it seems counterintuitive, but a buyer will be very happy to hear, yeah, we can get you all of those products, but it's going to take 10 days and you deliver on the 9th day versus, yeah, we'll get you those tomorrow. And then the client has to wait another week and 2 days for the product. They are much happier if you do not overpromise. So when reviewing, make sure you understand the problem. That might mean reading the package multiple times, getting someone else to read the package. If you need to, sometimes it can be taking components and asking your AI companion, what do they mean by this? Or going back to the vendor or the tender issuer, and asking them, what do you mean by this? Getting really clear on the problem is your first step to building your responses alignment. Earlier, we talked about the problem of overscoping. So make sure at this point you understand what a realistic scope of work is. I've seen tender documents that ask for an awful lot in a very short amount of time. Things like, we'd like you to rewrite this entire policy, develop a program, consult with the community, and get this in front of City Council. And you have from June to September to do that. If I see that now, I know it's not a realistic scope. And I've had the opportunity to go back to tender issuers and say, most of your council and administration will be on vacation in July and August. Would you like to consider a different timeline? At that point, they realize, this person understands our business, our calendar, and even if I don't win that specific bid, they've built a relationship with me and my brand because I'm inquisitive, curious, and I want to get it right. That's how they'll perceive me. It also helps if you build the appropriate team. Now, for me, in my practice, I will typically build a bespoke team to serve the project. I work with a strong network of collaborators, and that's possible for me. You may have internal resources that you're working with or assembling an external team. Ensure that you have the skills needed to serve the scope and the problem that we identified in the first 2 steps. I have an amazing user experience emerging professional who I would really like to bring onto a project. But until I have the right project to assign to her, I'm not going to just throw other tasks at her. It's not efficient, and it also erodes our relationship. So making sure you're assigning the right tasks to the right people builds a collaborative and effective team. And last, be honest about your capacity. I have written in bids, we recognize that we are not one of the big vendors. Therefore, what we offer as a counterpoint is a project plan that is customized to your exact needs. Depending on who's on the selection committee, their priorities, and the needs of the project, they may decide a big firm is what we need, or the bespoke team sounds like it's a really great fit. I've observed that in the projects I've lost, where I've assembled a great team and a strong project, but they've gone with a different vendor, in retrospect, that vendor is probably a better fit, and it may have been a project I wouldn't have been happy with anyways. I have lost some bids that at first I was upset about, and in hindsight, I dodged something. Being honest about your capacity might actually save you from some tough projects too. What I mean by don't overpromise is don't overinflate your expertise or your experience. Confidence without inflation. That's the balance you're looking for. So, just a simple example. A weak statement would be, we're a full service firm that can address all of your current issues. Well, I don't know about your business, but my business has a lot of different complex issues, and some of them require very simple technical solutions, and some of them are going to require a little more thoughtful response. I don't know that there's one firm out there that can serve all of my needs, and I don't expect them to. A stronger response could be, here's what we do really well, the specific resources we have access to, and why we think we're a great fit. That response tells the reader, the recipient, not only do you know what they're asking for, you know exactly who you are. That gives them confidence. Now, not every bid is about winning. I would love to win every bid. No, I wouldn't. I don't want to win every bid. I would love to win more bids than I lose. Some bids, though, are about learning. Learning what's a good fit, learning what kinds of work your firm is best oriented to do. For example, I've learned in my practice, I don't really want to work with big cities. A lot of times the bureaucracy and the internal politics make it really difficult to do cultural planning and cultural resource development. But in smaller towns and cities under 60 to 100,000, there's space for me to do my work. Learning that fit didn't happen overnight. It's happened through servicing a number of projects and realizing where my skills align best. Some bids are about building visibility. My practice spans the country. It's helpful for me to respond to small bids outside of Alberta when I have time and they're good fits, even if I think they're probably going to go with a local vendor. I'm trying to build a national reputation for my work, and that includes branding, advertising, marketing, going to conferences, but also visibility with procurement experts who might be buying my services in another 5 years when that next culture plan opportunity comes up. And it's also about building your internal processes. I've worked in really big organizations and I've worked in really small enterprises, solo enterprises like my own. as we uncover systems, we learn better processes. So your first attempt is probably going to feel pretty uncomfortable, and you might feel raw and overexerted after responding to an RFP. But the more you do it, the more practice you get, the easier it becomes, the more you start to realize this is a section that I can have pre-templated. This is a resource I can always rely on. This community really prefers these types of responses. Practicing your process is value additive to your business and will help you smooth out any awkward moments or risks. I'll give you an example. A lot of RFPs I see say pricing cannot be mentioned in the main document. There is a separate pricing sheet. One time getting excluded because I included a price within my main document was enough for me to learn that is one of my quality assurance tests before I submit a tender. It's small, but it's really frustrating. But it has helped me refine my process. And it's okay. There will be another opportunity in the future. Making a mistake like that, I've also found, unlike writing a great bid and not winning, but making a good impression, when you accidentally include pricing in the main document, typically they don't remember that. It's not a long-term impact on your brand. It's simply these things happen. I've learned to let go of some of those things, even when they're frustrating in the moment. So I've come to the final section where I'd like to share a bit of a summary. I do have a mock scenario, so I would welcome participation as we work through it. And I do have lots of time for questions and answers, but I didn't want to overscope this presentation because I knew it was a smaller group and I thought there would be a good opportunity for discussion if anyone would like to have some. So I want you to repeat after me. Better decisions are greater than more bids. Better decisions are greater than more bids. Sometimes we're so excited because the opportunities are coming. I see this at the beginning of fiscal year or at the very end of the year when everybody is trying to spend their money. Now, this isn't about not being optimistic. I think we should be optimistic as entrepreneurs, but it's about making better decisions over time inside a system you don't control. So we want to preserve your capacity. As entrepreneurs, I know this very well. We are pulled in many directions. We wear many hats, and frequently we have more things to do than time. If we make better decisions about which projects to bid on, we're protecting our own capacity to do the great work we already do. We build credibility with potential partners in the ecosystem that you're working in. Getting your name out there as a trusted and reliable partner for the future can really pay dividends. And it's also an opportunity to learn over time. You are not going to win every bid. When you do win, reflect on what you did right. When you don't win, ensure you reflect on how your process can improve and how you would approach this were you to do it again next time. Let's try an exercise. You don't need to be on camera, but I would welcome you to unmute. I will read the scenario and then maybe think there's no right or wrong answer, by the way. I just created this as an example. So, real scenario, you're a small contractor. You've got a solid crew, you know your people, and you've done this kind of work before, but not often in a building that's still open to the public. Those government agencies, right? Now, The municipality has said they're seeking a contractor to repair drywall and repaint, fix some minor flooring damage, sorry, not flooding, flooring. They want it completed in 6 weeks, and they need the building to be partially open. Now, they haven't listed a budget. That's not uncommon. So my question to you is, yes, can you do the work? But how should you approach this opportunity? Now, would you go all in and build a full detailed bid? Would you put in a lighter submission to stay visible? Or would you decide this isn't the right fit and step back? Now, your business has 5 people. You have strong experience in drywall and painting, but this open work environment, we're a little uncertain about. Are there any thoughts? Would anyone like to jump in? And I will look at the chat.
All right, guys, what do you think? Are you guys able to talk or raise your hands? Let me know if anything doesn't quite work and you're trying to go. Igly, are you there? You might have some, I think you probably have some insight onto this. What do you think? And do I know the answer? Yeah, I know the answer. Let me try this. Um,
Yeah. Well, here's what I would
yeah,
suggest. I would look at this in terms of capacity. Minor flooring damage. Do we have resources on our team that can do that? Igly would most likely bid on this. So it sounds like Igly is confident in the capacity,
mhm,
and it's pretty common not to have a budget in this type of project. So to submit what your cost would be. And even though you've had limited experience working in an occupied building, that might be something that you're comfortable with ensuring your staff are capable of doing, and you think that's pretty safe. I might suggest this one, I'd go light. I would personally
mhm,
go light for my experience. I also am looking at the question mark of flooring damage. Now, that might be
yeah,
where I check in with my resources because our people are incredibly talented. Some of them may actually also be trades expert in flooring.
yeah, yeah.
If that's the case, we're all in.
Yeah, I'd probably do the same. I'd probably reach out, and I probably know somebody who I probably know a guy who can help with the flooring, and I'm sure that the property manager too will be able to give some context about how they want the project run and what kind of access and what kind of materials they can provide or to close off sections while you're doing the work. They know what they want from you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, they've also said there's a mandatory site visit.
Yep.
So one factor, my business, I serve all of Canada. If there's a mandatory site visit in Halifax, before we even know if we're the winning recipient, I might go, they really want a local person. That's a
Uh,
really strong suggestion that they want
yeah.
someone local. I don't have infinite budget to bid, so I might opt out. And they've also said the scoring includes price, experience, and timeline. That does suggest that they're open to your response on timeline. So if it says 6 weeks, but you and your amazing crew know you can do it in five weeks and 2 days, include that. If you have confidence that you are able to serve this in slightly shorter, it's not overpromising if you know you can do it. If you really need those extra few days, don't trim it just to look better on paper, though. Don't fudge experience. Even if you really want the job, you may need to decline or bring on a resource that has it. And be honest about price. Now, what happens if the scenario changes? Same situation, but we've contacted them, Jen. We've just found out a few things. So nothing has
Mm.
changed about your business. The original RFP is still the same, but now we've learned from calling them, the last contractor missed every deadline that was set. The city is feeling particularly risk sensitive because their last contractor kept missing deadlines. And the contractor will need all resources to have police information checks. Does this change how you approach this bid?
Seems a little bit more serious. I would assume that if I am bidding on a municipal contract, that we would have already had our police information checks done at the time of hiring. And you would probably, though, limit your scope for the flooring guys as to whether or not they're prepared to have that.
Mhm.
Um, so there, and working with a municipality, there's probably lots of insurance and information and WSIB that you're going to need as well. So you would have had that already. You would have had that. I agree still with your mandatory site visit. And is there,
You
I
didn't
mean, I
change
think that you're
anything
still
else.
going in with the same,
Mhm.
with pretty much the same that you had gone in the last time because you've got everything lined up already.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
My approach in this case, I go back to that question of what signal is this are they sending? Good, good, good comment, Devin. I agree. Um, this was a very simple example I created just for this purpose, but you're right. It would more likely be a request for quotes in this case.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, perfect.
Oh, good
So
one.
let me read the comments from the chat just for those who are watching this after. So one comment is, for this mock scenario, I'd question why the municipality is going with bidding instead of just requesting quotes. It doesn't make sense. It's expensive to do an RFP
Yeah.
versus asking for quotes. So completely agree. And that is one of
Yep.
the questions you're going to ask yourself is this realistic? In the case that I presented here, I would send this as a request for quotes. I would just get 3 quotes. Typically, it's from people that already have a reputation. But how do I have their reputation? Maybe it's a relationship I've had in the past. That's
Mhm.
where you might be the recipient of a simple request for quote, and then you can respond. The other question, or more of a comment, they're actually going through this process with one of their contractors with an RFP to replace fencing in a municipality.
Mhm.
Contractor had a lot of valid questions, including extending the expected timeline
Yeah.
from 20 to 40 weeks. The questions were passed on to the buyer. An amendment was issued. This is a great example.
Hmm.
Sometimes procurement processes in municipalities and governments specifically, or even in large corporations, they're templated and standardized. They've got a template that their legal counsel has reviewed and approved, and the actual buyer enters in fill in the blanks inside that text. So you get this very pro forma document. In the case that Sheely has shared, as they're reviewing the document, they've realized this isn't a realistic timeline. Remember when I said sometimes they don't know what they want? Well, sometimes they don't know what they want, how long it takes. So going back and asking questions during the question period, I have more often than not had amendments issued, which will either adjust the original parameters, confine the scope further, or otherwise provide clarity that you wouldn't have had you not asked it. I also think when you are able to encourage them to go from 20 weeks to 40 weeks for a project that will take, let's say, 39 weeks, I would rather be the contractor that can get 40 weeks worth of work done in 39 weeks than to promise 20 weeks for 39 or 40 weeks of work.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, that last contractor missed deadlines. I wonder if it was because they were overambitious timelines in the first place.
right. And do you have, if you're bidding on this, and let's say that you win it, well, I guess they'd probably give you a start timeline. But what if you already had your guys on a different project? Do you have enough staff to do it within the start time and finish time? And do you don't want to pull your guys from another project and delay it? Have you sort of thought about what your staffing levels are like to be able to
Mhm.
complete the project?
Yes, and this is where my work a lot of the time is similar to if you're working in construction, you kind of have that one resource that does that one thing.
Yeah.
And I can't clone them, sadly. And so I don't know if we want us to clone, but I can't. So I have to say to myself, as I'm bidding back here in March, what does June look like? And have
Yeah.
I already assigned that resource to a significant project in June? If yes, again, I'm thinking about my capacity and what the promise I'm making is. One thing I've experienced a lot of is the buyers or organizations, I don't know about the buyers themselves, but the organizations always seem to be far too ambitious in their timelines. Like they'll issue an RFP that closes January 31st, and they'll say in the RFP that work is expected to start mid-February. Now, I have never seen an organization review, check references, and award in 2 weeks, ever. My experience is that timeline is usually between 2 and 3 months for my work, depending on your sector and your business. That timeline may be longer for construction, design, build activities, things that are requiring manufacturing and fabrication, versus my work, which is almost entirely intellectually based. So you also start to get a sense of what the realistic timelines are. I've pushed back on those as well. I have said in a question period, it says here you're anticipating awarding this and for work to be starting mid-February, but the tender doesn't close until July 31st. What is a realistic start date for this project?
Well, plus you have to be able to resource your materials.
Hmm.
So if you're
Yes.
bringing in drywall, do you have it in stock? Do you have to order it in? Is the person that you're ordering it in from, do they
Hmm.
have stock? So I mean, you're not always going to have things on hand. And I think in this day and age, I mean, probably have drywall on hand. But if there's anything that comes in as specific, it's always on delivery, and so you can't have it right that very minute. It might take a bit to come in.
And certainly those factors are ones that they vary industry to industry.
Yeah.
And you know your business far better than I will ever know your business. You may also know your business better than the buyer. So
Yep.
use that knowledge that you have to ensure that whatever framing of this project might be, you do have some ability to engage with the buyer and see if there's flexibility. Even if you don't win, a really positive exchange in that question period, I've had that result in um, sole source contracts before, where it's a project $5,000. They just need somebody. They know I'm close. They know I respond. They don't want to go with the big to do of another vendor. They're like, hey, Erin, can you do a $5,000 project? Yep,
Yeah.
that was easy. But it wasn't just saying yes. It was the fact that I had had a relationship with the buyer on a previous project. For me, that makes any submission worth it because it turns around on the back end. I thank you to everybody who's been here with me today. I obviously wanted to leave some time for questions. I welcome conversation, questions. Otherwise, just my information. So my work is primarily in culture collections and coaching, but I also provide general appraisal services, not for realty, but for personal property. And I'm situated here in Alberta, so I'd love to connect with any of you that are also in the prairie provinces. Thank you for having me today, and I'd love to do questions.
Mm. All right. This was a great conversation. I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed being a part of this. So yeah, I'm just gonna do our closeout over here. Actually, Erin, I'll give you one last chance. Is there anything that you wanted to end with?
Just it's a pleasure. I'm so pleased to be part of this community, and I look forward to opportunities to connect and share in the future. Thank you.
Definitely. And please, everybody, if you wanted to reach out with each other, part of the networking that we're doing is business to business, is supplier to supplier. And I mean, we've all been through it. We've all got different strategies that have worked or figuring out what hasn't worked. And I'd love it if you guys like had chats together and, sort of shared experiences. So, and if you want us, IWSCC, to set it up, just let us know and we'll put something together. But we really appreciate this. Um, so yeah, thank you very much. Erin and EMC Cubed Consulting for joining us today and sharing your knowledge. I'd also like to thank our interpreters supplied by Maple Communications, and of course, our audience for attending live or for watching this lesson through our website or YouTube channel. Reminder, IWSCC is Canada's national certifying body for veteran-owned and disabled-owned businesses. If you'd like to learn more about how we support Canadian businesses or find more resources like today's lesson, you can visit us at www.iwscc.ca. And a big thank you for everybody and for participating, and Erin for hosting, and have a wonderful day.